Okay, so here you are. You get signed to Stone's Throw with Peanut Butter Wolf, which is a very legendary hip hop label in the Bay. But you still have your corporate job. At what point do you say, "All right, I'm going to quit the corporate life and do music full time"?
So as I was recording, performing, and still working full time, there was no concept in my mind of like leaving corporate America and just going to do music and doing hip hop. I was hyper aware that the income that came from music was not going to sustain the kind of quality of life that I wanted to live. And I walked into a job making more than both of my parents out of college. And I knew like within a few years, I could probably be an executive here just from how things are moving and how this system works. Um, but unfortunately, I was laid off. So there was a big reduction of force that happened a couple years into my employment. And mainly because, companies, what they do is when they want to sell to another company, they try to slim down to make it look attractive. I guess we do that in real life too, right? We slim down to look attractive. um, and so they wanted to shave off as much of the kind of uh, expenses that they had. Me being a newbie, I was part of the chopping block. So for what it's worth, I think probably the most amazing uh, opportunity in my life came from being fired, being from laid off from this corporate job, because it then gave me an opportunity to focus on music full time in a real way, especially with my severance package. I had some money chilling, so I could just focus and do music and not have to worry about how I'm going to pay rent. Um, and that's when I started just getting more and more focused on music, building out this kind of solo uh, concept of me going on my own and just doing the Aloe Blacc thing. And I ended up meeting a young budding MC named Blue, and we were just spitting lyrics back and forth um, of songs that we loved, and he loved everything I loved, and he was very, very, very talented. He invited me to a show to see him perform, and I brought Exile, and I was like, "You got to see this. You got to see this kid, because he's incredible. I think we should put him down with the crew." So I went to Blue's show with Exile, and next to Blue, while he was rapping, was this other young kid singing, and his name was Miguel. And we ended up just like becoming really good friends with these guys. And I started to have this feeling of wanting to do solo stuff and like experiment a little bit. Blue was spitting fire, and I knew Exile needed an MC who was going to focus on continuing to just spit fire. Um, and I thought, let me just step back a little bit, give Blue a little time to develop a relationship with Exile. And they lived kind of close to each other. Exile was in Long Beach. I think Blue was coming out of um, San Pedro. And they ended up building a huge relationship. And I went on to like start this solo thing where I was experimenting with a bunch of different styles. And that one album that I recorded with Ono made it into the hands of Stone's Throw. And Stone's Throw ended up signing me based on one song, "The Change Is Gonna Come," where I sang as a vocalist instead of rapping. And I was nowhere near a singer at that time. I was still experimenting, but it ended up getting me signed to Stone's Throw. And I got a chance to be part of this very legendary label, and sort of overnight my status, my cachet just you know, went levels above where I was.
Okay, so you drop your album on Stone's Throw, Good Things.
The first album on Stone's Throw was Shine Through. And this was
Okay.
an experimentation album. This is 2006. I had just released the Eminon album with Exile in 2005 called The Waiting Room. And at that time, Exile started to record and write with Blue to put out what eventually was this classic album called Below the Heavens, featuring on one of the songs a singer named Miguel, who ends up being, one of the preeminent voices of R&B and future soul in the world. And at that time, my album was this mixture of future soul, hip hop, R&B, folk, and salsa. Like I was trying to put together everything that had educated me. And I would say to people that this is basically the table of contents to my future. Everything you hear me doing on this first solo album, you're going to hear me do in the future. I'll probably do it one chapter at a time. And the first chapter was good things. So I went completely throwback soul, I worked with the Truth and Soul group out of New York. They're a production team that worked with Charles Bradley. They worked with Lee Fields. They worked with, rest in peace, Sharon Jones. Because there were musicians mixed in with the Dap Kings, mixed in with that whole cultural group coming out of New York. So I was able to record a really cool throwback soul album. And one of the songs, I Need a Dollar, which was inspired by chain gang recordings of field workers who would sing their own tales of their hardships. And, that song ended up being ready and available when HBO was looking for a replacement to the theme for a TV show called How to Make It in America. They had a song in place, but the song had profanity in it, and HBO didn't want to go that route. Luckily, the manager of Truth and Soul was in touch with the music supervisor, gave him the song, they synced it. It became, I think, a really important part of that TV show, so much so that it became the hallmark of that TV show. In Europe, where people were illegally streaming the show and downloading it, in France, there was a radio station that started playing it called Nova, and you could liken them to like a KCRW. They're the hip, cool thing in France. And that gave me so much clout in France that I was able to go back to Europe and just really pop my whole career off again.
Well, that song, right now has 150 million plays on Spotify alone.
Yeah, Spotify didn't exist when that song came out. So I wonder what it would be had it come out when Spotify existed, right? Now it's a discovery situation. You have to discover that the song exists to then want to listen to it on Spotify, or it has to pop up in your radio, your randomized algorithm. But I think had it been out later, when Spotify existed, who knows? It could be at the billion status at this point.
Oh yeah. Because the song went platinum by itself, right? It did 1 million in sales in 2013.
The song definitely, over the years, it took a while to get there, and that's U.S. platinum, I think, or probably worldwide platinum. But definitely in France, Germany, Australia, the UK, the song was hitting the charts and selling. And so my career really took off in Europe. I had the chance to just travel Europe for several years off the back of that song and that album.
Right, and such a great show, by the way. I remember how pissed off everyone was when that show got canceled.
The show was great. I really loved it. Yeah. And shout out to Kid Cudi, who was an actor in the show. I really loved the show. But I think from a standpoint of HBO, it's like, who's going to be a fan of the show? Probably young, scrappy kids who are trying to come up and make it, and we can't really afford HBO, so we're going to steal the show however we can. So it wasn't relating to their checkbook. They weren't seeing the income coming from it.
Okay, so now your whole life has changed because of that song. And did you think that song was a hit, or was it just another song off the album?
Yep, for me, that song was just another song off the album. Didn't think it was a hit, had no concept of what a hit was. I'm coming from the underground where like a hit is when you get on stage, at least the 100 people in the pub or the nightclub, wherever you're singing, can repeat back your lyrics. That's a hit to me. I had no concept of international radio airplay, of international magazine covers, of making it into television shows and performances. All of that stuff came from this song, and it was a blessing. Certainly was not what I was expecting.
Right. And what I'm assuming is by that time, now the money's starting to roll in. You're finally back to your, Ernst and Young, well-paid days again.
Well, yes. The answer is money did start to roll in. I had the opportunity to sign, a publishing deal. I got the opportunity to then work with major labels like Sony in the UK, Universal out of Germany. And these relationships began my understanding of how the major music industry worked. I feel like I had the best education as an indie artist, doing everything on my own and with the help of Exile from the beginning, and then jumping into Stone's Throw where I got more support, more help. And now I was in a position where money was coming in and I was able to also, exact my direction, because I wasn't really managed by anybody at that point. I was still self-managed.
Okay. And then right after that, you end up meeting Avicii.
So there's to tell this story of how I got to Avicii requires a little bit of backstory. My relationship with Avicii came through, of course, the success of I Need a Dollar, because he was familiar with my voice, familiar with my songwriting, but he was working with Universal Records at the time, specifically Interscope or Geffen or one of those labels around the Interscope sphere. And I had the opportunity to get signed by Interscope by an A&R named John Eamon, who now manages A$AP Rocky. And John Eamon was brought into Interscope by Larry Jackson. And Larry Jackson was brought into Interscope by none other than Jimmy Iovine. So I remember being in New York at, I want to say the Blue Note or something like that, where John Eamon and Larry Jackson came to a show to see me perform. And then I went and I was doing a show in Las Vegas where John Eamon and Larry Jackson came to see me perform again. And this time they talked to me about signing. I ended up signing with Interscope. And that relationship led to me having an opportunity to have the ear of Jimmy Iovine, who put my song "The Man" in the Beats by Dre television commercial with Colin Kaepernick and with Kevin Garnett. But also to have a close relationship and be in the proximity of Neil Jacobson, who was really working to try to build Avicii's career. Now, Interscope didn't sign him, but Neil was working as an A&R for Avicii because he recognized that there was some real talent there. And through a series of coincidences, my name came up in conversations, and I was connected with Avicii to record with him. And we went in the studio, we recorded this song "Black and Blue" that he wanted me to be the voice of, written by Mac Davis. And then we started trying to make some music together, and we made some really interesting progressive kind of sounds, but it wasn't necessarily the direction he was going in for that album. And one day he calls me for a session that had been, I think he had double booked. He was in with Mike Einziger from Incubus. I was supposed to go in with him to record and finish up some other things. He said, well, Mike Einziger was like, just invite him over, let's all make something together. So by the time I got there, they had started working on the instrumentation or the chord progression just from the guitar for Wake Me Up. And I walked in coming with lyrics because I knew I wanted to come in with the best lyrics that I had available, or at least something that was very strong and very emotive that didn't require us to kind of try to catch a vibe in the studio. If you come in prepared with really talented people, there's no way you can fail at making something that you like. There's no telling if it's going to be a hit, but at least everybody in the studio is going to like it. And I came in with these lyrics, with "Wake me up when it's all over, when I'm wiser and I'm older." And I sang it to them as they were playing the guitar, trying to find a melody through, what Mike was playing on the guitar. And it sounded great just improvising in that moment. It sounded great. They were like, let's do this. And we recorded an acoustic demo that night.
Well, when the final version came out, it went to number one in 103 countries, became the fastest selling single in the UK, 250,000 copies in the first week. Currently, it's at 1.1 billion streams on Spotify. It was Avicii's biggest song.
Yeah. And it's my biggest
So-
song. I haven't had a song that big since. My goal is to try to always achieve a message, a feeling, an emotion that is going to touch people and inspire people in that way. And to have done it so early in my solo career, I think is it's a blessing and a curse. I'm not necessarily chasing that success, but I recognize that it's totally possible. And the more that I just continue to do what I do best, which is what I call AIM: affirmation, inspiration, motivation. These are songs that are supposed to be, in my opinion, the soundtrack to you living your best life, or songs that are the songs that can inspire you and motivate you through whatever tough times you're going through. Then I'll always have a place in this industry. I'll always have a voice where there's light in a sea of darkness, and songs that are about violence or depression or anxiety or misogyny. There's going to be a moment where people want to have that feel good inspiration, and I hope that my songs can always be there for them like that.
Well, did you and Avicii become real close over the years, or was it just, we're in the studio, we do a couple of shows, but
it was really the studio and shows. Like at his level, the way that he was working, I think he was on the road 300 days out of the year, and very impossible to maintain a relationship other than by text or just emails about songs that were half done. How can we finish these? I was always hitting him up like, we need to finish this one. Can we get to this one? But literally, when I looked at his tour schedule, there's no way. There's no way he's going to be on that and focusing on that. And then at a certain point, I was like, I remember when I quit touring because I recognized how grueling it was. And I kind of switched things around. Like, I felt if I was starting to feel fatigue and I've got 6 guys on tour with me, that's my band, I'm responsible for them, I think it's time maybe we slow down and find ways to make this more human than just business. And I was looking at the way that he was running from country to country doing gigs, and I was like, there's an issue here with the amount of work that's going on. And I don't know that he's going to be able to sustain his health in this way, because I'd gone to a couple of events with him and seen the entourage and the partying, and I was like, this is a disaster waiting to happen. And luckily, he made it through that. He was able to shed management, find a way to start taking care of his health and just making it through to the other side. And it was beautiful to see how, he was becoming enlightened and loving life again, and not just feeling like music was a burden to him. Because I know what he loved was being in the studio. And like I said, we didn't have that necessarily that close friendship bond. We had a very strong respect for one another in our craft, and an acquaintance in terms of how we made music together. But, in those moments when I would send him a message just saying, I hope everything's okay, just because you hear rumors or you read news articles and you feel some type of way, and I have the ability to reach out, I'm going to reach out.